The pass from Havili was magic. The shift on for Crotty. Boom, far down you go, Quackett Smith.
Me, oh my, I have enjoyed that. Yes, boy.
Sit back, relax, put your belt on, enjoy the
Draft Rugby, the game they play online in heaven.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Draft Rugby Show, the show they play in heaven. I am Harry, and I'm joined by my brother Nelson today. Nels, how are you?
Good, mate. Feeling free, ready to go. Readied ourselves with the dead weight of Cargie, so just feeling better.
You can't say that, mate. There was a vote, and I can assure when I said, should we drop the dead weight of Cargie, 51% said no, we should keep him. So you can't say that.
Was there...
He's a man of the people. Overwhelmingly.
Was there over 100 voters?
There was a fair few. There was surprisingly a fair few.
Was there over 100 voters?
Oh, you're going to make me check?
Yes or no?
No, there was not.
So I have 4 accounts. I didn't vote. I'm going to add those votes in later if I can, and get rid of it.
It's too late. Nah, you missed it, mate. You got to be faster than that. Anyway, we'll push on. On that note as well, I thought it's only fair if I'm going to give Cargie that kind of treatment, that'll put it on myself as well. And 55% voted yes, he is the greatest. So I'm pretty happy with that result. I'll take my 55%. You're next, mate. You're next. So for all the listeners, if you don't like what Nelson has to say, this is your chance to get rid of him. He's out if he goes under 50%.
Or you can show that I'm the most wanted one here. Everyone knows it.
Right, well, I guess we're going to find out next week on the pod. That's the reason enough to tune in. But anyway, let's keep going. The round 10 game, we're just going to do a rolling entree here, hey? The round 10 scores, we're not going to spend a lot of time on it because we're recording this midweek. Hurricanes get over the Brums 32-27. The Tars over the Highlanders 21-20 by a Bees phallus. Drua 14-30 down to the Blues in Fiji. So big win for the Blues there.
We had Moana losing 33-43 after late comeback against the Rebels. Chiefs getting it done yet again, 34-24 against the Crusaders, proving their worth. And Reds won 31-17 against the Force.
Yeah, so plenty of big results there as we kind of push towards finals. And I think it's now, the top 5 was pretty much locked in now. 6 and 7 are starting to tighten up as well. So definitely getting close. But let's talk about tips, Noel. Super Brew is still going. I've climbed up the ranks personally. I don't know if you know where you are, but I'm now top 50 out of 66. I've jumped into the top 50, so I'm doing well, but not as well as some. So I can say that in first place, there can be only one, which is what a good name from John Barkley in first place on 63.5 points. Then Sensation, equal top scorer of the round, 62.25 points in second. And in third, Brad Breath on 60 points. So pretty solid, well above me, and I'm sure well above you. You can't confirm where you're at, so I think you're about dead last. Can you?
I'm coming 20th.
I knew you were doing better than me.
Yeah, of course. Always.
Sure. All right, well, very good. Congratulations to those guys. We are kind of pushing on with the season now, so they've done very well to be that high and showing the two of us up for sure as well. Now, so we've got a couple of other points to get through here. We've got a couple of listener questions, and then we've got some news. So first question from Rabula on Twitter. He says, what are your guys' thoughts regarding the draft system being proposed in Super Rugby Pacific?
Look, I think it depends what your issue is. Maybe it does bring some interest outside the games. It gets you to know and maybe make larger stars of players coming in, something that I think American footy does very, very well. You know who these players are long before they turn up, long before they get a run. But I think the bigger issue is, we're going to get Australian players spread out over more teams, so we're hurting our cohesion. We're going to bring in more Kiwi players because they're probably going to be higher up the list more than likely each year, and we're going to end up with fewer and fewer Aussies playing in Super Rugby.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. I think across the competition, it makes absolutely no sense. You ruin cohesion. Kiwis players are clearly going to be picked above the Aussie guys, and it's going to hurt the Aussies in the long run very, very clearly. And I think it'll probably hurt the Kiwis as well. They'll have plenty of depth. But let's just turn it into the Bunnings NPC then, hey? Look, I think what could work in my eyes maybe is an Australia draft and a Kiwi draft. And then that way you keep them in the nations. I think the separate point that has been brought up is obviously about eligibility. I've got no problem with an Australian player being eligible if they're playing in a New Zealand team or vice versa. But I just think that there's got to be some cap to it as well. Maybe you can have a couple, 2 or 3 players from the other nation just to add a little bit of depth and hopefully make the competition a little bit more even across the board.
We've already got a cap, mate. You've got the international cap where you only 2 or 3 players. So all it means is...
No, but I'm saying it doesn't count towards that. I'm saying because and then the Kiwis aren't going to pick him either. So why would any top-class Kiwi come across right now?
Well, no, I'm saying I agree with changing the eligibility that you can be picked as an Australian player if you're playing in New Zealand and vice versa. But what I'm saying is we already have a cap of international players. We don't need to add another 2 or 3 international players allowed in each team. We've already got it. So instead of picking an English bloke, pick a Kiwi and he can still play for New Zealand.
Yeah, fair. And to be honest, I don't think we really fill the cap for most sides anyway.
No. Forced to all.
So I guess basically we're both not in favour of it, but maybe do you like the Australia-wide one?
Look, I definitely could see something like that working, and they could even play it off and really still build the players and the names. You could even do a competition-wide, like both countries doing the same. What's it called? Where you sprint stats, your lifting stats, your jumping stats, all that stuff.
Yeah. Your
combine. You could do a combine across the comp, but you can only pick within your nation. That could just build interest from both, because then if that's streamed, you're getting to see all the talent coming through. And each year you'll have a couple big names. We could have had Yorgo coming through, things like that, which will definitely add some interest.
And I think just promote the new Hot Chip podcast, which is already out there, to promote the young guys as well, right?
And look, honestly, the draft system, love it. Sounds like draft rugby, so that's something I can get behind. We had another question. This is from Rugby Fixation, but also, friend of the pod, clearly, but also seconded by a guy that we're seeing a lot more of, the conductor on Twitter. He's getting behind our stuff and he's got some good views and other stuff he puts out. They said, why do the Highlanders, now with a healthier squad, still not have Nareki starting or Marino McArdle even in the 23? Is this enough grounds to consider the Highlanders are throwing the match?
I did have a think about this one. I think they're not trying to throw the match. I think they're just insane. But I can break it down for a couple of reasons. So first of all, they're playing the Chiefs this week at home, but it's still the Chiefs. But then they play the Brumbies the week after. Then they host the Rebels and Reds, who are 2 possible wins, and they finish with the Blues in Auckland as well. So they got 3 out of 5 very, very hard games. So I don't think resting 2 weeks out from playing the Rebels makes any sense. So first of all, I don't think they're throwing the game. Secondly, if we go to Jonah Nareki, we know he's coming back from a stress fracture in his foot. So I dare say they were originally going to put him through club rugby. They rushed him over to play the Waratahs after they got spanked by the Force. So I dare say they're trying to manage his minutes in the same way they would have a bit more retrospectively through club rugby had they not rushed him over a week earlier than originally planned. So I think that explains that one. And the Marino McArdle question, I can say this is just lunacy manifest. As a Marino McArdle holder that's held him in my draft team since round 1. He's an absolute weapon. I get it. Hugh Renton, Sean Withy have been absolutely excellent. And Sean Withy's about triple the size I thought he was when I saw him in real life against the Tars. But McArdle was one of the form loose forwards in the comp 2 years ago. That makes absolutely no sense to me. He just hasn't had the opportunity to play.
And I'll add my view. Nareki is on my fantasy side. Get the man on and get him bulk minutes. He played 25 minutes last week. Surely you can give him like 50 minutes this week. Double it up. Should have get him starting. At least bring him on at the start of second half. Get this guy more minutes. Don't give him 25 minutes. That's not building anything. McArdle, geez, they're just, that back row is in some form. Renton has been immense, and Withy has looked really, really good as well. Frizzell is there, and at times recently, Frizzell's probably looked the weakest of the 3 of those guys we've just mentioned. That's concerning that they got McArdle and Frizzell as their 2 lower performing back rowers out of that lot. So, they've got some back row depth. It's pretty crazy.
Absolutely. So thanks for the question, guys. We will get, I think we've got a few more in the preview as well, but let's go the top couple of stories of the week, Nels, before we catch up with the preview of this week. First of all, Andy Marinos quits as the CEO, seemingly out of absolutely nowhere. And there's been I feel like there's some subtle mudslinging from all the reporters on the internet since then as well.
Yeah, interesting. We were chatting to him only on Friday night, and they definitely didn't get any vibe that anything was up. He was walking around chatting to people and didn't seem like he was worried about anything. But yeah, no, the big talk about it is that maybe he didn't like the look, or he was the only no vote on the Rugby Australia board for bringing in Suali or Suali'i, however you want to pronounce it, and wasn't keen on the other NRL players coming across. He's done a lot of good for that they're trying to get across. You look confused. There's a long list that Rugby Australia's put out. He seems disinterested in any of them. He didn't want to bring Eddie back until 2024. That was his goal as well after the World Cup.
I think definitely some different viewpoints to the rest of the board. So maybe it was just, I guess, differences of opinion, and he's probably thinking, well, if I keep going the other way and I'm not being voted with, maybe I'm not belonging here. But I think he's a good foil. He's so different to Hamish McLennan, and I think it's good to have a board with different opinions in the room rather than an echo chamber. So I'm disappointed personally. I was a bit skeptical coming from Sanzar, where we never really saw anything of him at all. I thought he'd done quite a good job since he's been put up as CEO. So I'm a bit disappointed, and he's a good guy too.
Yeah, look, he loves his rugby. He's around talking to fans. He's done well. He's brought us, from a significant deficit into making a profit, last year. He's been looking into, a bit more centralisation. He's been looking into, the new deal with Super Rugby moving forward, maybe PE, private equity coming in. He's done a lot of good things, but yeah, it just seems like he's taken us to the phase where he's created a bit more stability and brought us back into a profit. And now, with this 4 or 5 year period, technically 7-year period up when we're talking about the Women's World Cup as well, he's maybe not the man to try to push to grow the game in different ways. He wasn't super interested with, the Sunwolves and things at times. He didn't really want to expand into Japan as well. And when recent talks were there, and as well with, by all reports as well, similar with rugby championships growing and bringing in Fiji and Japan and things. So I think he didn't want to do things too different. And
I think he's conservative. And McLennan is very aggressively proactive.
We need something different into this next 4 or 5 years to get as many eyeballs on the game. And Suali has been a massive part of that so far.
Yeah, and that's a year before he even comes across. Anyway, that's all good points. Nels, the other one?
So we now have reports that Nick White is likely heading west. Larkham wants to keep him in Brumby land down in ACT. Surely White wants to go to some greener, warmer pastures near the coast. But yeah, he's rumoured to be linked even potentially with James O'Connor, who is another name thrown out as a guy that could be signing with the Force. And this is off the back of the signings we had, a fortnight ago of Tizano and Naisarani. They're really coming through in the last few weeks of trying to bring these guys across, or at least link them and prevent them from going offshore.
I wish I heard this stuff a month ago, because I never would have had my blow up. Like, there's so many fantastic signings.
What do you mean? This is why they're doing those signings.
Oh, it's because of us.
They listen to it.
Amazing, even better then. Look, no, it's fantastic news. I love it. I know there was an article a couple of weeks ago, Nick White saying he really wanted to stay in Australia, but they'd given him, Rugby Australia, given him a significantly reduced contract. They were kind of suggesting to him that he was at the end of his career. The guy's 30 or 32 or something. Like, he's still really quite young, and he wants to stay around for the next 5 years. So I think he's one of the world's best halfbacks. I think he's by far and away our best halfback. And I think it's lunacy that they're not offering him a big contract than what they are. The only downside, I think, for the Force here, and there are so many positives about these signings, but James O'Connor's another one. Both these guys are very experienced players that are used to being paid a pretty large sum of money, that are clearly not going to be getting any sort of decent Rugby Australia top-up contract. which means the Western Force are again going to be using a hell of a lot of their salary cap to try and pay for them, and they're not going to get the Wallaby top-ups that they should be getting to support them, to hold them in the club. So that's my big worry. I think I'm starting to wonder how the Force are going to be able to do this under the cap, because they're not going to get the help they should really be from Rugby Australia.
I feel like they'll get some leniency for keeping players here, and the fact that they're having their rebuild after everything. I know we've seen leniency in the past for the Force and the Rebels when they came on board, especially the Rebels. I know they had a lot of leniency when they created the club, but it's a tricky one. Nick White in a month will be 33, and he's talking about wanting to be here for the World Cup, the next World Cup. You're talking 2027, so he'll be 37 years old. But he's such a good player. The thing is, if he wants to stay in Australia, he's got the choice of taking a significant pay cut, or maybe giving up that hope to stay and finishing in greener pastures in terms of more money. Like, that's the choices you get in Australia and New Zealand. You can't stick around on big money when we're trying to hold talent moving forward. I want him to stay, but the thing is, we just don't have the cash to have him signed, Gordon signed, Tait signed, and
personally, I think that's the exact. I think you're exactly right. In that case, I just think Tait or Jake should go overseas for 2 years and come back a better, more complete player when Nick White is getting a bit further into his contract. Make him sign for 2025 back into Super Rugby, the guy whoever goes overseas. So then all three are signed over the Lions period. You know what I mean? And hopefully they come back a better player if you can't keep them all. But Nick White's our best 9. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I think that this is one of the tricky things we're going to see moving forward as well. If we're opening up eligibility overseas, they're going, we can lose him and we can pick him from overseas. That's one of the thoughts. He's played enough with these guys. We can lose him. We don't have to pay his salary. Yeah. And we can bring him back, and he's got that experience. But we
haven't got any clarity around that, though, do we, about the eligibility overseas?
No, Eddie's talked about looking into it and maybe making changes to see if something else is needed to make it be, beneficial for Rugby Australia. As in, do they pick more players, not less, get rid of the ability to pick any of the players?
Yeah, it's far from a done deal, though. Anyway, great news for the Force. I'm very excited to see where they head with it, and we'll touch on the other guys that you named in the preview as well. So let's push on to the main course. So round 11 of Super Rugby is up this week. Again, no more buys for the rest of the competition. So how good is it having a full week ahead of us? But firstly, on the Friday night, we have the Highlanders versus the Chefs. It's going to be no new injuries, I don't think. Is that right? In either the Highlanders or the Chiefs camp?
As far as I know, yep.
Except for, I'm assuming, surely there's something wrong with Alaalatoa, because that just hurts too much otherwise. I would say there is one late one, Brodie Retallick misses out this week with a groin strain, so he's out. And Eteni Nanai-Saturo is also not in the squad, but we don't really know if that's rotation or if there's actually an injury there. Nothing's been named online. Returning, we got Billy Harmon coming back to captain the side from personal reasons. You got Martin McArdle, I believe, is fit now, but he hasn't been picked in the 23 now that it's come out. So I suspect that he's actually just not being selected at the moment. Then you got Josh Dixon coming back from family bereavement. He's back on the bench this week as well.
Yeah, interesting one. I think he's a really important part of what the Highlanders need. Fabian Holland brings in, really good line out and even locking lock. And I think between him and Dixon, that strengthens a significant weakness for them. But yeah, we're going to see him off the bench.
Yeah, and then the last ones you had Anton Leonard-Brown finally back from his round 1 ankle sprain, straight into the starting jersey, which I love. And Alex Nankerville is back on the bench after a concussion way back in round 5. It blows my mind that it's been that long that those two have been out for, and they've been doing so well. Daniel Rona has been a standout. So's Boy Hippie. So the depth those guys have at centres is just ridiculous.
And seemingly not from nowhere, but seemingly from nowhere with Rona. And you're talking Boy Hippie, yes.
He's a tradie. He's working part-time. How the hell he's got the fitness to just come in and get up to speed and play like that is outrageous.
And he's the one who's still starting this week. But Nankerville, we knew was good. He was a backup for them, but we knew he was as a weapon. Poi Hippie as well, very inexperienced in compared to Anton Leonard-Brown. But geez, this is looking like a class centre pairing. 4 or 5 options that can just put their hand up week in, week out. If anyone's missing, it doesn't matter. They don't miss a beat.
Yeah. The odds on this one, you got the Chiefs as favourites, 115 to the Landers at $5. The line is 13.5, so a couple of converted tries, and it's just whether or not Mackenzie kicks the conversion, basically, is it?
Yeah, it sounds like it, but I'm not sure. What's the record that the Chiefs have beaten the Highlanders? Did that happen earlier this year? Because there was a trend happening for a while.
Yeah, I can find that out very quickly for you, because I think they faced them round 3, they beat them by 21. It was 28-7, and that was not the record. I think it was like 23 or 24 points. Like it was around there. They were pretty close.
Yeah, so look for the Chiefs to do that.
You're starting with the tip, are you?
Yeah, well, probably. I don't know. Like the Highlanders aren't last place. They're nowhere near the other Pacific Islander sides. In Moana, very last, and I think Ndrua might be coming 11th. But the Highlanders, it would be fun to call them the Sunlanders. That just sounds fun at the moment. The form they're in, even if it's not fully deserved.
Yeah, after their 1 point loss last week. Look, I think what we learnt last week was Aaron Smith is just absolutely incredibly important to this side. He's obviously trying to peak for the World Cup this year because he will be the All Blacks starting 9. He essentially carried the team to within a whisker of beating the Tars last week, particularly when he drew a penalty, put a 50-22 across, then off that line out, managed to dart through and score himself. Like, it was just ridiculous. To be playing that well for as long as he has, he's an outrageous talent. And it's going to be really interesting to see him partner with Freddie Burns this week as well, who slots in at the 10 jersey. Hunt drops back to the bench. That's a pretty experienced 9-10 option. So it'll be interesting to see if they can steer the team around with a bit more purpose than maybe what they have in the past.
Experience, but not cohesive. And then we're throwing in a couple other changes in the back line. And that adds a little bit of a concern for me. Scott Gregory, we're a fan of old Rosy Cheeks. Coming in at 11, you've got Connor Garden-Bachop on the right wing. And then we've got Sam Gilbert shifting back to fullback. Haya had played, off and on throughout the year, hasn't been there the entirety of the year. There's not a lot of cohesion in that back line for me, especially when you're looking at that 9-10 combo. But there is class. There's a lot of talent there, and some of them are young. We've talked positives of Connor Garden-Bachop, then we've looked at some of his matches in recent weeks and think that maybe he isn't up to it in terms of the standard of Super Rugby currently. But then he goes and pulls out a few really, really solid runs and looks pretty positive last week. So
I think you're pretty harsh there. I reckon if you dropped in Mitch Hunt in for 10 for Freddie Burns, I reckon that 6 to 15 is close to their most consistently picked side.
Well, I mean, if you look at Scott Gregory, no, that's obviously not true.
I mean, he's been injured, but he's been playing at that team for years at centre and wing. So it's not like he's new to the team.
Never played with Freddie Burns. Basically never played.
Basically, it's just Freddie Burns.
Higher, Thomas Jensen played a fair bit of 13 at points last year as well. Connor Garden-Bachop's been fullback, been wing. Sam Gilbert was centre last week. There is still chopping and changing.
Yeah, absolutely. So mainly positional changes, I think, as well. Interesting that Gilbert's just moved straight back to 15. I assume he played inside centre purely to give Tait a rest last week.
I think so, but we've also got No James Lowe as well. That's another one that's been there a fair bit that's dropped back out.
Yeah, well, he's played, I think, pretty much every minute of every game. I think he's a bigger mission. And again, I reckon that it's just a rotation now that they've got more fit legs, because there's been no word on an injury from him, and he's been kind of their Mr. consistent, solid winger as well. That's just kind of doing his role. So in the forward pack, you mentioned Will Tucker, Fabian Holland, who is a big boy and a talented young lock still in the side. And then in the front row, they stay with De Groot, Makaleo and Ainsley. I think that front row in particular is very strong. But the Chiefs have got an exceptional scrum as well. So I think their set piece is going to really struggle, but I do think the rest of their team should be able to match it a little bit closer than maybe in the past. There's just not enough strike power still there for me. I'm not sure how they can put enough points on the board. That's my biggest worry.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to really look for a lift later in the game with Nareki, Fakatava, Withy, Dixon, those guys sort of coming on towards the back end of the match. But I don't know how they turn it around. They do have talent and they have guys that can split the game open, but a lot of these players in that back line have not been consistently in form. Pyer, off and on, Garden Bishop, off and on. Gilbert has been good and safe. Burns, we haven't seen lots of. Smith is in blistering form, but like there is concerns. Thomas Umunga Jensen's been quiet for a lot of the season, has shown glimpses where he looks really, really good. So for me, I think this backline is going to have to step up massively, or it's going to be a tough ask for them.
Yeah, absolutely. On the Chiefs side of things, I guess the big news on their end is that Damien McKenzie has signed for a couple more years. So surely he ends up as the All Blacks 10 next year after the World Cup, if not this World Cup.
Mate,
Richie again last week.
He is in such good form. He is, honestly, Barrett's been pretty average this year, hasn't he?
Hot and cold. I wouldn't say average. I think he's actually warmed into the season, but he has been a bit hot and cold.
He's been very much a distributor at 10, not taking the ball to the line very much at all. D-Mac, you can put him at 10, you can put him at 15, and that bloke is running through the defence, creating gaps, everything around him. His versatility and how good he's playing at 10 is huge at the moment. And no, not many people would be putting him above Barrett, but he is looking good. So he's got that future jersey locked in.
Well, on the point of D-Mac, how do you actually feel the Highlanders try and stop him from dominating like he has been?
It's an interesting one. I mean, he does shift out to fullback at times or links with Sean Stevenson in D, and you'll find them both floating around towards the back. You've got to nullify both of those two players. You can't leave the ball in open play. When you're kicking, it has to be high, it has to be short, and you have to have people on them. If you create any space or time in hand for those two players with the ball, you're asking for trouble.
Yeah, I think the counter-attack is huge. You have to take that away from them. And considering we've just said that the Highlanders' strength is not going to be their set piece, I don't think it's a good sign if they need to go to set piece to slow the game down, and they're not going to actually be that competitive there. Maybe there's a bit of an opportunity at line-out time with Brodie Retallick, the fantastic All Blacks lock not being there. But that does worry me. Then I think the other one is you just have to find a way to stop D-Mac's quick ball. You can't just rush him. I believe it was a few weeks ago now, but I'd be surprised if it's changed, that he was the most kicking 10 in the competition. He's just got such an array of excellent short kicks. So if you rush him, he just puts a cute little chip kick in and the ball just inevitably bounces up for shooter Stevenson or Amoni Narawa, who just scores immediately because that's just what they do. And if you hold off on him, then he just runs and scores himself. So I don't know, is there any way to stop him at the moment?
The way you stop him is try to slow the ball getting to him. It's Frizzell, Harmon, Renton, Withy when he comes on to really slow that breakdown and be pests at that breakdown. I'm not sure who the ref is, but we have seen a lot of inconsistencies. We noticed it in the Waratahs match last week where refs are not policing the breakdown as consistently as you'd expect. So I would be trying to slow the ball down as much as possible early in this match and see how much of the boundaries you can push around that. Because if the ball's coming slow, your defence is set, it means it makes that little bit tougher on D-Mac.
Yeah, absolutely. And Forsyth Bar Stadium, I should mention as well. So, I mean, there's always more points scored there. So this one could be a big score. What else? Obviously, we mentioned the change having ALB in the centre, which is going to make a big difference to them. Peniasi Mali gets a start on the left wing as well. They've got no outside backs on the bench. They've got Bryn Gatlin, Cordus Ratama, and Alex Nankervel. So I guess
they've used Nankervel plenty on the wing.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, very true. But I suspect that he's surely going to sub in for Daniel Rona and reunite the dream team, ALB and him.
You'd think so, but Penny Mali hasn't had a lot of game time. He's not young and he's not inexperienced, but he is at this level. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Nankervel come in there if he's not really stepping up. Mully, if you look at his stats in the past, he's, NPC 66 tackle percentage last year. He is going to have his hands full at times throughout this match with some strong wingers. But
Connor Garden matchup to have a field day in fantasy points. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, he could do well, but it's
He'll
still
miss
going to
as
be
many as he makes.
He does miss a lot.
I got one more question for you on this one.
Directly when he comes on, at least.
One more question.
Yep.
They've still got Luke Jacobson at 8, Peter Gus at 6. Have you worked out why yet?
I have not worked out right. They seem to be the only team that hasn't realised that it is easier for an 8 to pick and run off the back of a scrum. Like, give a few teams a little bit longer, and you're probably going to have Cam Clark picking it up at number 8. You're going to have...
I know why. The only thing I can think is because Luke Jacobson's got a better long ball cut out straight to DMAC, so DMAC can just continue to score or set up a try with every touch of the ball. That's the only reason I can think.
Look, I wouldn't hate them putting DMAC at the back of the scrum so no one has to pass it to him. He just gets the ball quick. The middleman.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea. I can't wait to see someone do that. Surely like Corin Betty or something like that just needs, if these laws come through, like he's the perfect 8th man, isn't he, Corin Betty? He's got to score every time. How do you stop him?
You play him on the wing and you bring him in. There's nothing in the game to say you have to play your number 8 at the back of the scrum.
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
I can't wait. Anyway, we digress. The tip, Nelson. So the line's 13.5. Which way are you going on this line?
I'm going the Chiefs to win by, just looking at the team, I'm going to say they're going to win by 20 points.
Ooh, I went 22. So we've gone 1 point either side of the last matchup. So you think Highlanders improved? I don't think they have.
No, I don't. I just... Anton Brown, old legs, tired, mully.
That is blasphemy. Look, I just thought Forsyth Bar was worth 4 points. I was originally going to say 18. So Forsyth Bar, that's where dreams are made as a fan.
I just want the Landers to do something. Let's move along.
Pushing on the Saturday, we have the Fijian and Drua versus the Hurricanes. New injuries on this one, Nels. I don't think there's any that we know of just yet from the Ndrua. But we do have James Blackwell and Caleb Delaney both out with concussion. And then it looked like Peter Umunga Jensen. We saw him grimacing after making a tackle out in the wing, and then he limped off about a minute later. So nothing confirmed there. There's just been nothing posted. But, there was already question marks about all their other centres. So... that might pose a little bit of a problem.
Maybe the Ndrua could give them one of their centres because they seem to have plenty at the moment. In terms of the return column, I think all we have is Dane Coles returning from his concussion. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah, and Meli Deranolungi was said that he was having a rest for cramp because he was just overworked about 5 weeks ago. So surely that bloke's got to be somewhere near it considering that he was their captain. But I think, is it Tanaka Vata that's been playing in his jersey has been so good as well. Maybe they're just going to rest him for a few more weeks so he can keep playing at the moment because that guy is a weapon.
Technically 5 weeks, it's still a rest. It's just a very, very long one. In terms of the betting line for this one, the Ndrua are paying $4. The Canes are paying $1.22. And the line is 11.5. Do you think the Drew will cover an 11.5 head start? That's going to be interesting to see.
I reckon
it is at home. It is at home. Look, this is my little interesting point on this one. So the Fijian home crowd effect. So when they're at home, they score 25.6 points. When they're away, they score 24.3. Not a huge difference. 1.3 difference, right? But when they're at home, they concede 27.3 points. When they're away, they concede 42.8. So pretty much it's 15 points difference if they're at home. So what happens is they tighten up their D. They've got an extra man in D with this extra push from the home fans, but it doesn't change the attack. And they're going to need to score some points against the Canes in this one.
Yeah, I mean, all I can see here is that the difference is like 2 points or something. So they're going to go down by 2. So that's way better than the line. Look, I actually, we won't get to the tip just yet, but I think that they've been so good at home. The Blues were a bit of a blip. I'm still not 100% convinced by the Hurricanes. They did well to beat the Brumbies, I think, relatively comfortably in that second half last week in New Zealand. But at the same time, I just don't think the Brumbies actually played very well at all. So I still think that there's some question marks over there. Maybe just their ability to hang with the other top 4. They're definitely in the top 5 teams in the comp, but that other top 4, I think, are probably just a class above on most weeks. What do you reckon about the actual Hurricanes team?
Look, I've had a question this year, which I think early on I knew the answer to, but starting to feel is Geordie really their 12. They've got a lot of centre options. Morby is doing very well at 15, but Geordie isn't flourishing consistently at the 12 jersey as we have seen him in the 15 jersey. Does it mean you just need to give him more time, thinking that's what he is, and he's a future 12 and a long-term 12 prospect? Do you think he's a long-term 12 prospect?
I did at the start of the year, but he just doesn't seem to be able to have a big effect on the game. That's my biggest worry right now. I really don't think he's used that much of an effective distributor. I don't think he gets gain line for the team. I just don't think he imposes himself very well. So no, at the moment, I don't think so. I actually genuinely think the experiment is failing, and I was pretty excited by it to start the year. I think, to me, David Havili is so far above him in his couple of games since coming back from injury. It's just, if I was him, I'd be saying, hey, can I have a few games at fullback, to be honest?
Yeah, he does not look like he's evolving in that 12 jersey, and it seems maybe he's overthinking. He still plays a role in the team, but he's not breaking the line. We're still seeing his kick being used, but we can see that at 15. He's physical indeed. That's well and good that he's a big body, but he isn't stepping up to be a standout 12 in a position where they do have talent. And if they've got to squeeze him in and they're trying to build utility, then great. But Geordie isn't a man that they use for utility. He's a man that they start in the 15 for the All Blacks.
Yeah.
And this probably isn't doing that favours.
Yeah, I think it's really going to hurt his All Blacks chances. I definitely agree. The only thing I would say is I think he will stay at centre for the Hurricanes for the next couple of weeks, just purely because of the injury clouds that are around Billy Proctor with his shoulder, Balin Sullivan with whatever it is, no one's been able to tell us, and with Peter Umaga-Jensen limping off on the weekend as well. So there's a lot of depth issues there. I think this could be the week that we get the bus back to outside centre, Kini Naholo on the wing. What do you think?
Yeah, Sevilla's found a little bit of confidence in recent weeks, and the Hollows look really good. There's something to it, There's definitely something there that you can fit them both in and give Sevilla that chance there while there's a gap.
So I haven't got the table in front of me. I hope you can pull it up while I talk. But the run home, the Hurricanes obviously have the Drua this week and then Moana, so the bottom couple of teams. But then they played the Chiefs, the Blues, and the Crusaders. I would pick them to lose those last 3 games. How far ahead are they from 6th and 7th? Is it inconceivable that they drop out of the top 5?
Look, they're sitting at 31 points with 7 wins from 9. The Blues are just behind them by 1 point. The Crusaders are just behind them by 3 points.
I'm not worried about those guys. They're all overtaking them.
Top 5. But then you got the Reds and the Tars. Reds are on 19, Tars are on 17.
Long gone. All right, they're going to finish in 5th.
Well, if you go 4 wins, that brings 3 wins would bring the Tars up and the Reds up to pretty much on point. If you said they're losing those 3 games.
Yeah, but the problem is they've got 2 wins out of Drua and Moana.
Yeah, they're fucked.
Yeah, so they're going to finish top 5. It's just now a matter of can they get themselves a home semi-final, a home quarter-final, basically.
Don't be so sure that they're going to get a win in Fiji.
I'm not so sure, but I think 1 win is enough to seal top 5 for them.
It is.
Yeah. So we can move on from that one.
Top four, maybe not.
I don't think that they're going to finish top four. I know the Hurricanes fans might not like the sound of that, unless Cam Roigard just carries them to more wins like he has all year, because he's probably the biggest freak of the competition right now. But speaking of Roigard, how about the next generation spine at the Hurricanes? They got a Safa Almua, who is outrageous. They have Cam Roigard, who came seemingly from nowhere to be probably the form halfback of the comp. They got Aidan Morgan, who is starting to run the ball again. He scored last weekend, I think, from a dart. He still doesn't quite look as confident as what he was last year when he was just handed the keys for the season. But he's growing. He's running the ball. He's attacking the line. He's playing his game. So it's good to see. And then with, the likes of Geordie Barrett outside of him, I think he can afford to do that. And I think he knows that as well. And then Morby just killing it in the 15 as well.
Yeah, that's a spine I think that can build significantly moving forward. And you've got the likes of Billy Proctor around there, Chrissy stepping up. A lot of young players that are. I
would just say as well, Artie Sevilla, he counts for the last generation and the next generation. He'll be there starting 8 forever.
Is every generation. But they've also got Brett Cameron as well. So they've got 10s that can push each other moving forward. So look, that was something that I saw, and I think an interesting thing that. They're doing well now, and maybe as you touched on, not as well as, some people might perceive, but they're doing very well. But this is a very young spine for them, and it's going to only get better and better.
Yeah, and look, the only other points I want to bring up here for the Hurricanes, Kenny Naholo, I mentioned him before. I think he's due a start, whether or not Bus ends up at outside centre on the bench, but Kenny is just electric, and I think he looked great off the bench again last week. So absolutely want to see him get a run this week. And then the other one I had was Marcy and Vota at centres in the Fijian and Drua. Revovo is obviously just killing it as well. I think that the rotation around there is not really helping at the moment. I think Vota's probably on form, just got to ride the bench. Is that what you think as well?
Look, at the moment, I'd say so, which is something that seems really hard to chew. If you're a Vota fan off the back of last year, he was so good. But Marcy has usurped him for mine. Revovo isn't going to get budged. And they've found some outside back options, so they don't need to shift Marcy, which I don't really think worked for them anyway, onto the wing with Ronnie Sau, Robert Amanda, Broa Sessi, and a few other guys around. So for me, I think Vota keeps riding the bench. Yep.
And tip for this one, we said the line's 11.5. I've said it earlier. I think the Ndroa will beat the line. I've got them down for the Hurricanes to win by 8. I think they'll blow it out just away from a bonus point, although I'm not that confident, to be honest. It could be a little bit closer, but I have got the Canes by 8.
That was exactly what I had in my mind, 8. So that's why I
lower then
aggressively. Look, I'll go lower just to be nice. I think at home it gets you an extra bonus point. You think 8. I think you're wrong, mate. It's going to be one more point going the way of the Ndroa, and they're gonna lose only by 7 points.
Right, sounds good. All right, Crusaders versus the Force also on Saturday. A host of.
Fuck it, they're going to lose by 2. My stats that I said before, mate, that's consistent. They're going to lose by 2.
All right, I like it. The Crusaders versus the Force. The Crusaders dealing with a few injuries. They had Finlay Brewis and Chafiaki both pulled pre-game. We're not sure exactly where they're at yet. Dallas McLeod came off with a shoulder injury. I suspect he may well have found himself out of the 23 anyway, with all the cattle coming back. For the Force, they've lost Bryce Hegarty to a knee injury, Tim Anstey to a concussion, Santiago Medrano to a pre-game rib injury that I think he'll actually return from. Raboni Voseartho missed last week for the birth of his second child. And then there was one more, Bailey Kunzel as well. I think injured his hamstring, so he's gone as well. So again, a long list of injuries for both teams. And I'll let you do the returning players, but I'm just going to say, surely we get Will Jordan coming back. I did read something about a week ago, it must have been Monday. That was just all of a sudden he's a week-to-week proposition again. What happened 2 weeks ago? It was he could basically play this week. Now they're not that confident again.
I
They're
read
crushing
things.
him.
I read it differently, mate. I at no point have I thought he was an assured return.
He was already on the field, mate. He was wearing the jersey in their change rooms before.
Of course he was, because he can't wear it on the field when the game's on. So they're getting him wearing the jersey during training. So look, honestly, Will Jordan is not even in my mind until he's on the field. Until he's named, it means nothing, mate. He is not back until we see a lineup with him in. Get him out of your mind, drop him out of your fantasy team, whatever you need to do. But we also got Naisarani potentially returning. Now, he's been rehabbing a knee injury. And as you said, Medrano hopefully will still be able to play after his little rib injury as well. The betting line on this one, this is pretty solid. The Crusaders are paying all of $1.02. The Force are paying $11. There's another match that have these similar odds, and
Would you put 100 on? Would you put 100 on Crusaders for that?
To make $2?
Yeah.
No, definitely not. Look, I'd probably put, whatever amount of cents I need to put on the Force to make that $2 instead. The line, so Force are paying $11. The line is 24.5. So not only 3 tries, throw in a penalty, and that's roughly where you're at. So that's pretty rough and grim for Force fans.
I think that's tough. Crusaders, first of all, hashtag get Nano on. I don't know when the last time we said that was. I did
Regularly.
Slide him in here quite subtly on the background for those watching on video. I don't think it's going to happen because, let's be honest, we all know Will Jordan will be back this week. But look, the front row, can I just mention Mighty Williams at the moment? He has been absolutely outrageous. Seeing him pick up from the back of the ruck and dive for the line last week, like once he was in the air, it's a try. No one's going to stop that guy when he's actually moving like that. There's no possible way. No one's catching him. No one's going to put themselves underneath because they'll be crushed. It's a try every single time when he dives like that. But having said that, Ollie Jaeger, second game back, I don't know how confident he is in his own neck, but surely Williams deserves a rest as well.
Look, Tamati Williams, not only are they doing those things that you're saying, but he's getting used more, 1 or 2 passes off a ruck and a breakdown, leading the pod moving forward. So he's just been everywhere on the field, and he probably does deserve the rest. And the line's 24.5 points. Maybe this is the time you give him a rest. Harry, Will Jordan? No, he's not playing, mate. Ignore him. Look, the other names we touched on returning, obviously Tizzano. He came back last week, made 21 of 21 tackles, 12 carries for 46 meters, 4 tackle busts, 1 a turnover. This kid is 22 years old. Couldn't get minutes for the Waratahs last year. Headed offshore. We all sighed, thinking, no, we've lost him. He's going to end up playing for Italy or something along those lines. And he's back. And, geez, 1 week back. And people realise we missed this kid. He's only 22.
He's so good. I loved him at the Tars, and I completely understand why he left. Great to see him back at the Force. I just think it's such a good fit.
Okay.
He's a weapon.
And the other one's Naisarani. Apparently, reportedly, he is very close or likely to be back, is what I think I've seen this weekend.
Yeah. So I mean, Raboni, we said, is coming back from his young son's birth. I think that really, Tim Anstey's out. It makes it pretty easy, doesn't it? Wells goes to 6, Naisarani at 8, and you're away. And you're probably looking pretty bloody good.
Yeah, geez, you're looking very bloody good. But look, the issue is, how fit is he? I don't think he's played a lot of footy for some time, not only off his injury, I think leading into that as well. Like, it's been a fair bit of time. So whether he comes in off the bench, I'm not sure. They haven't really been backing the likes of Pew. It's probably a tough ask for them.
I mean, Bonnie could start. Bonnie could start Naisarani on the bench, but I just think Naisarani's got an absolute engine. He's one of those guys that, to me, he looks like he could not play for 6 months and you chuck him in Super Rugby and he'd still make 18 tackles and 24 runs. Like, that's just the guy that he is. My worry about Naisarani is that when he was playing, I think at the Brums, he had this habit of having a blinder and then disappearing for a game. And I just wonder if Cron can get him in the state of mind to back up week on week on week? Because obviously he's coming back wanting to play for the Wallabies.
You're wondering how, if it was 6 months ago, was his last game good or bad? Is that basically what you're wondering? If he goes good, bad, good, bad?
Yeah, that's right.
Last game like?
Yeah. Watch the tape, and if it was bad, pick him up.
Look, he's been at the Force, he's been at the Brumbies, he's been at the Rebels, and he's back at the Force. That's a lot of time moving around clubs, and he hasn't been at a club for more than a few years. So he's an interesting one. We know he's a massive prospect. He's still only 28 years old. He's a Wallaby. We love him on the field, but I would just love to see him be at the Force long term and build some consistency there. And that might be the thing that, gets him consistent on the field.
I've got my main concern for the Force, and that is that I think Hegarty's going to be gone. So I think that then just starts to question what are they going to do around 10 and 12. And I don't think they have another good answer, particularly considering that Bailey Kundal is gone as well. I think what we're going to see is Hamish Stewart slides into the 10 jersey. But then who do they play at 12? I think it has to be Pullman. And I still just think, I've said it before, I think he has a little bit more growth to go before he's consistent at this level. He just still makes a few too many errors for my liking. So I think that's a real weakness that's going to looked to be exposed by the likes of Richie Mo'unga and David Havili, like two players that you just do not want to show weakness to.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, the only other names that are there are Grayson Makara, who we haven't really seen. Oliver Cummins, who we haven't seen. They got Foliaki, who's think maybe once come off the bench. Maybe he's a physical centre as an option for 12. He's a Kiwi himself. Tongan history, I think he's played for Tonga as well. Jake Strawn, they've thrown into every other position. He could probably fill into that 12 jersey as well. But there is issues for them in that 10-12 axis, and it's going to be a tough week.
The other one that I wanted to talk about just lastly for this game was just the scrum. Last week, the Crusaders battled a little bit against the Chiefs, almost surprisingly, considering it's been such an area of strength. Whereas the Force last week got pumped by the Red scrum, which was inconceivable, but they just lost so many men. I worry, even with Medrano coming back, that they have a young Lucy and they have Horton, who, as good as he's around the park, is pretty, lacks a bit of physicality in the scrum as well. I think that there's an issue there, that the set piece is just going to go massively against the Force, and this one could blow out. But what do you think? What's your tip for it? Mine's 24.5.
Look, in New Zealand, I think it's a really, really tough ask for the Force. They've come out and they've shown that they can be in the fight with teams, maybe not for 80 minutes yet. They've got some cavalry come in last week, this week, that may be helpful, but the injuries are going to prove too much. So I think that line's probably pretty much on the money, and that's not a disgusting response from the Force to lose by that much. Like, it's going to be tough. So I'm going to say maybe they'll scrape in and do better than that, and I'll say they'll lose by 22.
I started at 20, and the more we talked, I just kept adding points on my tip here. So I'm at 26 right now from how long we talked about this game. So Crusaders by 26. I think that they're in trouble. I just think that the inconsistency at 9, 10, 12 for the Force is going to bite them against the best 10-12 combo in the competition by a mile.
Yeah, they're in trouble.
Right, next game is Blues versus Moana Pacifica. New injuries for this one. You got no new injuries from the Blues. Moana has Ray Nuia, who had a concussion. He came on late and left relatively early from a pretty bad-looking concussion. I guess the only question around the Blues is going to be Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, but they basically said last week that he was fit and just surplus to requirements. They just didn't feel like they really needed him. So I can only take that as he's on the outer now that he's not hanging around. So why would they continue to put their eggs into his basket with him leaving? So I hope that's not the case, but geez, it was hard to see it any other way after he's definitely been their form 12. Plummer's been solid, but he doesn't break the line in the game open like Tuivasa-Sheck does.
Yeah, look, I think you've probably read it right. Plummer's been good for sure. And I think that if he wasn't well, maybe wasn't doing well, Roger Tuivasa-Sheck does come back in. But he's been doing well enough to keep him out.
Yeah. Odds on this one, Blues $1.02, same as the Crusaders line. Moana $11. So of course the line is 24.5. You guessed it. The Blues, Akira has been on the bench for 2 weeks in a row. Segner's been exceptional, but it's Akira. So surely he starts at 6, doesn't it?
I mean, yes, maybe because they're versing Moana. Like, he's clearly not their first choice at the moment. I know he's come back from injury. He's been on the bench for a few weeks. They haven't rushed him back into start. So, you know, they've done this in the past as well. Maybe they don't think he's, you know, as fit or in the form to rush back in. But if he's going to get a start, this is a good game to do it and, you know, bring him back into that starting role. It is Akira. He will be an All Black, you know, later this year. So, he'll be in the squad. He is Akira. But yeah, look, he's just got to take his chance if he's there. We said, and we think that maybe he has been sluggish and maybe the fitness isn't there after returning from his injury. And I mean, whether that's enough for the Blues to want to keep him off that starting side to give him a bit of a kick up the bum, you'd think a World Cup is enough of a motivation, but yeah, it's hard to know.
Yeah, Patrick Tuapoloto as well. We haven't heard anything. We know he flared his knee up. Don't know what that exactly means, but no word on a return either way from him. So we're assuming Sam Darry and Cameron Suafoa continues. I think obviously Tucker is the other option, who I think he's had a couple of really good involvements, but I suspect that was before Sam Darry was fit early in the season. So I just think he sits behind those guys in the rankings more than anything.
He has been so good when
he hasn't been so good, mate. He had one really good game and a couple of good other involvements.
You talked him up. He got a run, did really well. Yeah. An article came out saying he's been so good, like where's he been? And that they've found that he is.
Did you write that?
What?
Did you write that article?
Maybe when I was trying to flog him off for a trade or something. But yeah, no, he's been good. I hope we're seeing him involved. But look, the Blues...
He was on the bench last week, so I would think he gets minutes. But, I just think they really rate Sam Darry. Let's go back a few years ago when they pinched him from the Crusaders and he was an awesome buy. He's just been a bit injury-plagued, but he's an excellent player and has been playing so well. And I think Suafoa's been improving every game as well. So it's actually a fantastic 3 locks to choose from without, essentially one of the leaders of the side, Patrick Tuapoloto, if he's out. That's it's not too shabby.
Be crazy, isn't it?
Yeah.
But all in all, the Blues have remained pretty stable, especially in their backs with their selections throughout the year. Obviously, we had no Perifetta last week with Sullivan filling that 15 jersey. Can you remember why was Perifetta not there? Was it just a rest week? We thought
in his shoulder he was cooked, so he'll be gone for a while. Yeah,
so he's gone for a while. So Sullivan's still there in that 15 jersey, and probably no real other changes in the backs.
Yeah, that's right. And on the Moana side of things, look, I don't think there's really any big personnel changes for them. That's the scary thing. I think they actually have some of their strongest players out there. I think they're still missing the likes of, Sam Slade in the locks. Obviously, Kepu would be huge for them as a spiritual leader. But really, otherwise, I feel like they got most of their cattle back. Tamatini made his comeback off the bench last week, so it will be really interesting to see if he takes that first choice number 9 jersey or if Arianari can hold him off there. But not many changes I would expect. It's just how do they manage to get themselves in more games, because they're not doing it at the moment. I don't know if this counts as a home game because it's in Auckland, but there's actually going to be a crowd. So maybe it's a double home game, and maybe that's the one thing that is in their favour this week.
No, they're not used to crowds, so it can't feel like a home game. Look, for them, they've really got to shore up their discipline. Last week against the Rebels, look, they went down by 10 points. They scored, I think some points relatively late when the game was already, probably lost. But they had 3 yellow cards. They gave away 16 penalties. You do that against the Blues, and that's just, bulk points. They're going to kick it from anywhere if they feel like they need to, but more than likely, they're just going to score tries off the back of it, walk you up the field, and they're so clinical that they'll end up taking points throughout that match every time you make those mistakes.
Yeah, look, it's definitely what I'm worried about in terms of blowing out. The line we said it's 24.5. Have you got any thoughts on what the end result might be?
Look, if I do my deep analysis of how they've gone recently, I reckon, they come close against the Crusaders and a few other sides, but they let it slip against teams like the Highlanders. Look, I hope it doesn't blow out and become a massive shellacking, and that they feel there's a boost at home. And I'm going to say they'll lose by on point 24 points.
Wow. Okay. I think that it's going to be worse. I just can't really see them competing, to be honest. They should. I actually like so many of their players. I just don't think it's going to happen, but I'll go 29 points.
Yeah, look, I just hope more than anything.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right, pushing right along, we go to the Reds versus the Tartars in Townsville this one. So I guess a Reds home game in that regard. And the Reds women will also be playing in the grand final on the same day as well. So they've got the double header, which is pretty cool. New injuries on this one. They did have James O'Connor go off at halftime, but that was just illness last week. So we expect he'll be fit and firing, and he was in great form in the first half. And not sure for the Tars, again, Gleeson, he went off at the half and he wasn't quite 100%, but not exactly sure where he stands. He was only just back from a calf injury, so hopefully not a recurrence of that. Anything else there, Nels?
We've also got in the returns column, we've got Angus Blythe returning after his red card. I think that was quite a bad card. I hope we see him maybe come onto the bench, not rush back into the starting side, because that was a pretty big mistake. Waratahs, we've got Ned Hannigan hopefully returning from his concussion, along with Harry Wilson, which will make some changes, especially I think with Hannigan coming back. What do we see here for the line and the odds?
Yeah, so the Tars are paying 160. They're the favourites. Tars at 225. The line is 3.5 points, so expected to be relatively close.
Yeah, the Reds are 160.
Oh, sorry, is that what I said?
I think you said Tars are 160 and Tars are 225. So
I mean, you can hear who I'm going to tip, can't you already? Not biased. Don't worry about that. Look, I think the main one that we want to focus on here really is this is the two teams probably vying for the second most Wallabies jerseys, and it's just all about the head-to-head. So Michael Hooper versus Fraser McReight. McReight had, I think he was the best player in the comp last week. Outrageous, should have scored 5 tries. Michael Hooper showing me how smart he is with his 50-22, which was brilliant. Continuing just to be running at everything. He's the first man chasing a kick. He's the first man covering a tackle, but maybe not making quite the same impact despite his huge engine. Gordon versus Tait. I think Tait's now really in the last couple of weeks realised that he's been leaving a fair bit out of there. So I think Tait running from the half is looking excellent. Again, he's back to his best. And Jake Gordon, as a contrast, I think he started really well and maybe has been a little bit quiet the last few weeks. Maybe just the look of relief showing where his headspace is at after they snuck away with a win against the Highlanders.
Yeah, I think you're right there. It's interesting that they're both going different directions at the moment. We've also got the battle, or hopefully we've got the battle of Gleeson versus Wilson. This is a guy that is just super physical in Gleeson compared to, a class player who keeps missing out with, competition like Gleeson, and that's Wilson, who has really stepped up, I think, through this year and got better and better. Eddie wants him to play how he plays, just lift his work rate. That's a different Wilson. What we've seen from Rennie was saying you need to change how you're running into contact, do all this over complex stuff, where Wilson, the guy, his strength is running through people and running through gaps. Don't try and change that. The issue he has is his off the ball work, he's getting back to his feet, that sort of stuff. So hopefully we see him continue to build and we see Gleeson just be the angry bastard we know he can be, and this be a real battle between those two. We've also got what is a growing, maybe competition in Parecki and Fassler. He's also a similar side, I think, to Parecki. He's just stable hooker that can throw a line out, scrum relatively well. He'd come down to New South Wales last year after being released from the Reds before, they sent him an SOS and he went back, and he's really evolved and grown for them. And he's really becoming a Parecki-like hooker, I think, for the Reds of late.
Yeah, I thought the only contrast there, I think, is that Parecki's got him by a landslide at the moment in the scrum. I think, it helps when you got someone like Harry Johnson-Homestead next to you. Tetra Faulkner, a very experienced Lucy as well. And Fazler's got 2 young props on either side of him. But I just don't think that's probably the one area I think they're really quite different. But I do know what you mean. Fazler's just that consistent player at the moment. Last time these 2 teams played up in Queensland, the Reds got up 32-20. But the Tars just basically a new team from that one that went up and travelled to Queensland last time. Parecki, maybe Gamble, Feketi, Nawang and Edawasi were the only starters from that same team last year, which is crazy. And, we did say before, and I was pre-pod, that Carlo Tizzano was the opening 7 last time. So I wish we had Tizzano, but not to be.
Yeah, and we had Gamble at 6 that week as well, and Harris at number 8. There's just so much rotation in that back row over the last couple of years for the Tars, with a lot of talent there. But look, one of the things we already touched on, does Angus Blythe come in? Right now, they've been using Connor Vest, Seru Uru in the locks. Do you think they bring Blythe straight back in? He's a very, very experienced lock, more experienced than those 2. Does he come back into the starting side or does he come onto the bench?
Over Connor Vest, 100%. He'll go straight in.
They've got Ryan Smith as well. Does he keep staying on the bench or does Connor Vest then shift down?
Ryan Smith will start, no doubt about it.
Yeah, he was on the bench last week. So you're saying both those 2 guys are out?
So Ryan Smith will have a rest last week. He'll be back starting this week without a doubt because he's had a huge year. And Connor Vest will be dropping back to the bench maybe or out of the 23. And you'll see Angus Blythe straight back in potentially.
And what happens to Uru then?
Okay, sorry, I wasn't counting for Uru. I would prefer Uru on the bench, to be completely honest. But at the same time, I think what will happen in that regard then is that Angus Blythe will sit on the bench and he's still coming off the naughty boy chair. It takes a little bit longer to get out of a chair like that when you've been out for a few weeks.
Okay, so we got there. You agree with me after disagreeing, and then you realise. So hopefully we see Uru still there starting Blythe on the bench to
It's
return.
not a lock, man. He hasn't been good at lock all year. They need to move him.
Uru? Yeah. I agree with that. He's a back rower.
We've got the same question we've asked 50 times. Pataya or Campbell at 15. It's pretty obvious what we're going to say. Pataya at 15. Push on.
I agree.
Kenny Ravai, give him a start again. Nongor's killing it. Ravai can both play both sides. How about we just put both of them on? I feel like that's the best start to the game.
Drop for Agassi?
Yeah, bench.
He's not doing anything around the paddock. Sorry to say that to him, but he's not doing anything around the paddock. Penny Ravai comes off the bench and makes an impact as soon as he touches the ball. Maybe that's what they want from him, but yeah, this is a tight game. Get your guns on the field.
Yeah. And then on the Tars side of things, obviously Ned Hannigan back, we said. We expect that he'll just go straight back to starting at lock, which means you then bench Sinclair, who can play obviously 6, 7, 8, 5, 4, pretty much anywhere. They might play him at loose head if they end up down a couple of players. Tony Seal, I think, will continue to start at 6. He's been a revelation since coming across and fantastic for the Tars. And then obviously the other jersey hoops at 7, and it's going to be Gleeson if he's fit or Harris on the bench. Is that what you got?
Yeah, I think so.
No more changes to the back line?
Last week, what do we have? We had Gordon, Donaldson, Feketi, Parisi building, I think, well in the centres. Peach and Nwanganitawasi with Jorgensen at fullback. I don't think we see any changes to that back line, and I hope we don't see any changes to that back line.
Yeah, so I think, again, the Tars should just run over the red scrum here. If they don't, it's completely disappointing when you think about the cattle that they have, even without Angus Bell. So I think that's one area of strength. I'd contrast that with the rolling maul. In the preseason game, the Tars scored 2 rolling maul tries against the Reds, and we joked, the Tars finally have a rolling maul at the Brumbies. No, really, the Reds just have no tight 5 and anyone can score rolling mauls against them. Well, that has completely changed through the course of this year. It's been exceptional to see the amount of improvement that the Queensland Reds have had in their rolling maul and tight 5 so far. I honestly think that is one of the biggest improvements of any team in terms of a pack gelling together. It's really, really, really impressive. I think that they'll have the wood over the Tars at the rolling ball now, maybe significantly, like back Fazler in for a try, and the Tars will be trying to work out how to hold them out. It's just going to be hopefully Holloway swimming through the rolling ball.
Yeah, no, I agree. The Reds definitely have become a lot more solid unit there, but this game for me is going to be dictated by the back rows. And it's very easy to say that as a back row, but this game is going to be dictated by the back rows. If we see the likes of Hooper step up, Gleeson have a big game, I think it's going to make a huge difference for the Tars. If not, and we just see the Reds back rowers run ragged, and you get quick ball for Tait and the blokes outside him, I think it's going to be a tough ask for the Tars.
I reckon it comes down to Ben Donaldson. I reckon most of the games do for the Tars now. Again, other than maybe the top 4 or 5 where they're going to struggle, the whole team, there's Zabba Blinder. Anyone outside of the top 5, the Tars win comes down to Ben Donaldson playing well right now. And I think that it's going to come down to how well he can put the Tars in the right area of the field to play low-risk footy. They make a few mistakes still. They give away a few penalties still. So it's going to be up to him to steer them around accurately. I don't think he's done it yet this year. I think he's capable, but I don't think he's done it yet this year.
Did he play well last week?
No.
So it doesn't come down to him then, because they won and beat the Highlanders.
Oh, mate, by a bee's dick because Aaron Smith went off.
Yeah, look, I think
if Aaron Smith plays for the Reds this week, they'll pump us.
It's about time we see him step up. He's had a good chance here, and he's been lucky with Edmund and Harrison out. Geez, he's very lucky Will Harrison's been out, because in all honesty, I would have seen Donaldson move to the bench and Will Harrison rightfully get a crack in that 10 jersey, and that tears me apart that we haven't been able to see that, to be honest.
Yeah. And the tip for this one, I'll go first this time. The line we said was 3.5 to the Reds. I'm going to say the Reds, despite what I want, will win by 5.
Us by 5.
I love it. I hope you're right. Pushing through to the Sunday, we have one more game to get on with. So Rebels versus the Brumbies on the Sunday. New injuries on this one. We had Pone Fa'amalsili come off with concussion. Sam Talakai limped off with an injury. Carter Gordon may have an HIA. They pulled him off for like 72 minutes. No obvious reason. Seemed filthy about it, so we don't know. And he hasn't been name-checked as out. So I reckon he probably passed his HIA and he'll be there, but it's not guaranteed. If he doesn't play, we'll just put the money on the Brumbies by $1 million now. And Brumbies, Ben O'Donnell they haven't confirmed it yet, but he's done his ACL, mate. Let's just call a spade a spade. He's gone. He'll be gone for the year. Very disappointing for an excellent young player, and hope to see the best of him as soon as possible next year.
In terms of the returns, we've hopefully got Stacey Illy returning from his concussion, Dickie Hardwick from his calf, Josh Canham, I think he's getting pretty close as well, if that's correct, Harry. Matt Phillip has also been touted as, an outside chance to return.
Yeah, so Josh Canham, we just don't know what the injury was, but he's meant to be back. I love how you've done the special of Hardwick back from his calf. Like, he's got 2 of them. The calves don't keep people out. He had a muscle tear in his calf, a big one that's kept him out. So he's back from his muscle tear.
Clearly means calf injury, not the fact that he's got a calf. Harry.
Well, say calf tear then. Come on, mate. People don't know what you know. They're not sitting looking at the casualty ward. I love the footy. You sound like the NRL commentator. Oh, he's got a syndesmosis. He's got 2, actually, champ. And it's never kept anyone out.
We said returning his ACL. Matt Phillip. He's got 2 ACLs.
Yeah, it's called an ACL injury, mate.
Yeah, mate, you got to be specific.
I mean, I didn't read that. You did, but the Brumbies, no returning players. The odds here, Brums 185 favourites over the Rebels, $3.40. The line is -9.5. And then just worth noting, there was a couple of Aussie double ups in the first half of the season. They played them very frustrating. 5 weeks, eh? What a dumb draw.
These two teams are up against each other twice. So, I mean, the Brumbies versus the Tars twice in a month, and now they're versing the Rebels twice in a month. Like, that makes no sense. It makes no sense. It shouldn't happen.
When you do the draw, sure, you just do like the round robin, and then the teams that play each other after you reset the round robin. Like, doesn't that make sense? I don't understand how.
I think the difficulty is around sharing stadiums, things along those lines. But geez, it's annoying to see. But look, if Cannon's back, which we're hoping he is, I think he comes straight back in to start with Trevor Hosea, who has been lifting the last few weeks. If Phillip returns and you bring him onto the bench, I think we also see Dickie Hardwick come onto the bench. I know he had a brilliant start to the season, but he's got a tough task to get back in with Ekuasi playing really, really well.
I don't know. I think you just start at 6, to be honest with you.
I was going to say there is potential to put him at 6 or to put Ekuasi at 6 or do whatever you want to do there.
Putting Hardwick at 6. Ekuasi is your big ball runner.
Geez, have you seen Hardwick run the ball this year?
Yeah, but I still
like
think that he's a 6. He's not an 8. He's not an 8. He did well, but he's not an
8. The other one is probably Stacey Illy. Does he come back into that 12 jersey? And the Romanian rumbler, Feliuai, to return to the bench, meaning Ripley kind of misses out of that as well.
Yeah, I really like him, though. Pincus in particular, I just want to see him get more game time as well for the Rebels. I feel like he's exceptional for what he's the chances that he's had.
Yeah, look, I mean, their backs, they seem to have actually quite a few players that you go, I want to see more of, that are doing relatively well. But the big question really is, where are the Rebels? Where do they sit this season? You know, they're pulling out a lot of tight matches, but they're not necessarily, you know, able to win those tight matches. And I'd been having a chat with a few people on Twitter about Carter Gordon, and people have been saying it all counts for nothing. All his form counts for nothing if the Rebels keep losing. They need to start winning, or else, you know, he's not really there or thereabouts, and compared him to the likes of Lolosio. I'm like, I'm sorry. Look at the 14 blokes around Lolosio. Look at the guy coming off the bench for him. I'm not someone that's buying into that at all, but it does prove a point that the Rebels are close. And if they're going to start getting some Wallaby selections outside the cohort there and get a few more runs, they're going to have to start getting some wins. And, you know, they've got to bear the fruit of all this hard work and tight matches that we've seen so far this year.
Yeah. And we have the question there, how do they fix the second half fade out? To me, it's just bench. It's just have a very good bench. Hopefully they can keep... They've had I've quite liked their bench, but it's just been relatively inexperienced outside of the front row as well. So, you know, you start bringing the likes of Matt Phillip on the bench, coming back from his first week, Dickie Hardwick coming back as well, then all of a sudden you got a little bit more leadership at the back end of the game. So I hope that's the big change that they need.
Potential bench, Uelisi, Elof, Marcial, if he's not injured, I think he's probably missing this week. But they've still got the likes of... one more potential good tight head.
Guy's out as well, yeah.
Yeah. But then you throw in Phillip. You've got Tamati Ioane and Hardwick potentially there if you want to carry more forwards. You've got Pincus. You've got either Illy or the Romanian Rumbler. There is some strike players coming into that and some real class players.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, hopefully that's the fix for them, because it's been very frustrating to see them fade away after such amazingly good starts, matching with the best teams in the comp. But look, Andrew Kellaway, probably the only other one worth a mention, just on fire since he's been back. Just so good. And it's fantastic to see him. He's one of those players, you know someone's good when they can have an extended break and come back and just fire from the first moment they take the field.
He's been better.
It's classic of any ex-on international player, and I think that's what he's becoming.
On Monday night, there's the show on Stand between two hosts. I don't know if you had a listen. The guys were talking about, one of them sort of said, is he becoming more and more like Adam Ashley Cooper? He's just stable, not necessarily how he plays, but the fact that he is never inconsistent. He's never playing bad. He's never making mistakes. And those things. And there was definitely some disagreements when that was floated. But in the sense that he's consistent and he's not making mistakes, that was something that Adam Ashley Cooper, you know, was week in, week out. That was him for years and years and years. And in that fine line, I think, yes, there is those similarities, but not necessarily the rest of how they play.
if we're talking similarity, is they're both good players, then yeah, sure. But no, otherwise I wouldn't think that at all. Andrew Kellaway is a very different style player to Adam Ashley Cooper in my eyes. And I think Kellaway is an out-and-out fullback that can finish on the wing. Adam Ashley Cooper was exceptional wherever he played. I don't think Kellaway's there at any kind of international level as a centre just yet. And I think he's just rock solid. He's safer. I think he's a safer player than Adam Ashley Cooper. But Adam Ashley Cooper is a stronger carrier, whereas Kellaway is more elusive and probably has a bit of a better, more accurate kicking game. So yeah, I think there's a lot of differences, to be honest with you. Personally,
it wasn't my point, but I agree with you.
Who comes in to cover? Why did you say who comes in to cover O'Toole? Who wrote that? O'Toole's not a player.
No. I don't know. O'Donnell, I'm guessing. Who comes in to cover O'Donnell? Not Corey O'Toole, who's playing.
No one. That's what will be sitting on the bench, and if Ikitau's back.
Yeah, well, there you go. So it's probably Sapsford on the bench then.
Yeah, that's what it'll be.
There's not really covering.
Yeah, Ikitau, we didn't mention him, did we? Ikitau should be coming back from his concussion, right? So that's definitely one that's slipped through the cracks there.
Yeah, that's a big in for them.
How many rolling maul tries to the Brumbies this week?
You got to say 2 at least. 2 is probably a safe bet. But look, the Brumbies, is this a match that they're going to want to, prove that they're still a clear step above the Rebels, or are they going to find this as a chance where they can rest a few of their players, knowing there's only a handful of matches throughout the back end of the year, and rest the likes of White, rest the likes of Lolosio. Next week they come up against the Highlanders, so another chance that maybe they could do it, but it's a Kiwi side still. Then the Force before they end with the Chiefs and then Rebels. They've got a relatively easy run home. So, I mean, we may see them rest some players. They might not, because it's not that far off the bye.
I just think it'll be small changes from here on out. I think they'll use that Brumbies Chiefs game to really try and lock themselves in as a top 2. I think that'll be their goal for the rest of the season now. And I think that you'll just see the odd rotation of 1 or 2 players each week just to try and make sure that they're fresh for the Chiefs game, and then Chiefs and also fresh for the finals as well.
So how do you see this one going, Harry? How much do the Rebels win by in your eyes?
The line is 9.5, so I'm going to say Rebels to lose by 15 points because the Brumbies are a class above.
Yeah, look, I think 9.5 isn't enough points. The Rebels have been doing very well, lost by 16 against the Crusaders at home. What did you say? How many points?
15.
Yeah, I'm gonna say 18 points.
Oh, all right, that's big. I got one more listener question to finish the pot off for you. Anton Hoffman got in late at couch_rugby. Why are Hurricanes rugby so secretive about their injuries? Is the first part to it. Nelson, any ideas?
They just don't care about the listeners and the fans like we do. Put it out there, guys.
Of course, I've just got the title for this one. Nelson Blast the Hurricanes.
Just seriously, though, be open about what's going on. You have fans that want to pay their money to watch you guys and be members and everything. You don't have to give out every fine little bit of detail and things that you think can affect. But if a player's injured, just give us the fucking info. It's not going to change your result. Oh, shit, this guy's out for 6 weeks, not 4 weeks. Now how are we going to prepare for him this week?
It's a crock. I feel like it's just this level of fear of coaches that all of a sudden it gives away their tactics. And if in doubt, just sneak someone through. We don't care that much. Just give us an idea generally of what's happening. Anyway, the other part of it is what's up with Tu'u and Parry being excluded this week against the Highlanders. Well, I mean, I think we've definitely challenged the Michele Tu'u resting, but Parry Chicken, I don't know. I didn't think of that, to be honest. Where the hell's Parry?
Yeah. Is he injured?
No.
Yeah, I don't know. There's weird times. I don't know why they're resting him. So
he was on the bench last week.
Yeah, some real questions. That's questions for people smarter than you and I, apparently.
Well, no, it's questions for the coach that isn't proving himself to be smarter than anyone right now. Anyway, that's probably a bit harsh.
Maybe it's at the back of what was Perry Perry's yellow card for? It was for nothing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was BS, wasn't it? Was that the one where he was onside and got called off and they gave him a yellow?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure maybe they're
doing everything right.
Do that and play the next week, Perry. You have to have a rest, mate.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, let's finish up with that. If you made it this far, please make sure, most importantly, you vote Nelson off the pod for next week. Because, I mean, he's got to be the lowest, and 51% is the current. 50, you could go 50-50. If you can go 50-50, I'd love it.
55. I'm expecting
Nelson, just keep in mind that he'll have a huge swing vote from all his Twitter accounts to try and vote himself into the podcast.
I probably won't vote. So if everyone, make sure you vote me in.
Probably won't. Depends how it's going.
Depends how it's going. Like, if I need to vote, I will. So...
All right, like us on YouTube, Facebook, everywhere you can, Instagram. Share it with your mum, dad, grandma might like it. Everyone will. So pass it out there. Thank you for listening, and we shall see you next week.
Media campaign, vote yes.